Hey guys, welcome back to another sports stuff video. Today, we're talking about the Arizona Cardinals and their offseason plan. Now, obviously, this is episode 4 of the series. I'm going to be doing every single team going in order of the NFL draft. So if you do enjoy it, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Eventually, I'm going to get to your favorite team, and I'm very excited to eventually get there for you guys. But yeah, let's get into it. So the Arizona Cardinals. Re-signings is always the first task that we take on. Marquise Brown will be the first re-signing that I'm going to consider. This past season, he had 51 receptions for 574 yards and 4 touchdowns. Since coming over in the trade from the Baltimore Ravens a few years ago, he's been a solid number one to Kyler Murray. When Kyler's healthy and he's healthy, they do pretty good together. You don't have much outside of him. You have a bunch of guys you've drafted: Michael Wilson, Rondale Moore, Marquise Brown. You didn't draft, but you traded a first for him. Andy Isabella didn't last long. You have a bunch of guys to keep drafting, and none of them keep working out. But Marquise Brown has been the one solid, consistent option you've had. So, don't have much outside of him. Might as well keep him. Like I said, you did send a first for him because of that trade a few years ago with the Ravens. It's solid contract value. I think that if you can get what I'm about to say for Marquise Brown, I think it's a pretty solid number. He's had 1,000 yards before in the NFL. Not easy to do in the NFL. So that's why I'm mainly really want to retain him. But gave him a 3-year, $62.5 million contract, $37 million guaranteed, being a 60% ratio. I think it's a really good number for Marquise. It's not top 5 money. It's not bottom 5 money. It's about 11, 12, 13 in the NFL right now. And I think that Marquise Brown is about, probably about the 15th, 16th best wide receiver one in the NFL. So you're paying for about what you get out of him. Next up, we have Chris Barnes. Last year had 40 tackles, an interception, 21 stops, and a 60 PFF grade. After coming over from the Green Bay Packers, he was a solid rotation linebacker with you last year. Over 20 run defending stops is really good for a linebacker. Somehow, he's still only 25. This man was probably drafted at 20 years old because he had 4 years in Green Bay and a year in Arizona. So he's still super duper young for how much experience he has in the NFL. I think a lot of teams would love to have a guy like Chris Barnes. I genuinely think that if you don't retain him in-house, he might be one of the first linebackers signed in free agency. So kind of like what I did with the Patriots last time. If you're going to lose someone who's going to get signed immediately by another team and he played well for you, might as well keep him, right? So I gave him a 2-year, what was that? A 2-year, $11 million deal, $7 million guaranteed, that's 63% guaranteed, $3 million signing bonus, $4 million base salary. I don't think he's really bad. I think it's about solid for what Chris Barnes you can get out of Chris Barnes. Next, we have Greg Dortch. He's just a solid wide receiver. 24 receptions, 280 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Him and Kyler have really been like a really good connection. He has good hands. He's an okay route runner. Like I said, the Kyler to Dortch connection is a great chain mover. When you need a first down, when you need a big play, Greg Dortch is always that guy that I feel like they target. He's a restricted free agent tender, so you tender him for $1 million. Who wouldn't do that, right? A solid wide receiver has a connection with your franchise quarterback. Why wouldn't you keep him for $1 million, right? I think it's a pretty obvious move that they're going to do. Next, we have cuts and trades. So, sadly, the first cut I am doing is DJ Humphries. He had a 62 PFF grade, a 68 run blocking grade, and a 56 pass blocking grade. He's been mediocre for a few years now, kind of living off of just like the Cardinals didn't have any other options, so they just had to keep re-signing DJ Humphries. But they have options now, especially in the draft, and they have Paris Johnson. He tore his ACL week 17 of the NFL season, so he's going to be out almost all of next season. So he's already like 32, 33 years old, on top of being paid, on top of being out all of next season. I just don't see them keeping him at all. You do save $15 million from releasing him, but I think due to the NFL CBA, you can't cut injured players. So this is I believe if you're able to cut injured players, I'm cutting DJ Humphries. So Paris Johnson, he played right tackle all season, played fine. But if you want to move Paris Johnson back to left tackle, or if you want to draft like an Olu Fashanu, a Joe Alt, make them the left tackle and continue Paris Johnson's development at right tackle, that's good too. I just think that if you can cut DJ Humphries, you do it, save $15 million. But if you can't cut an injured player, which I don't think you can, whatever, you still draft someone to replace him. Next, we have some honorable mentions. These are guys that I wouldn't cut, but I could see why they would cut them. James Conner, you saved $5 million by cutting him, but he had a great year, and he's still on a cheap deal. Like, he's a solid workhorse running back. You're paying him $5 million to be your number one running back who's a workhorse. Had over 1,000 yards and like 8 or 9 total touchdowns. Pretty good for running back number one. Next is Budda Baker. He saved $5 million on a trade. So I do think that Budda Baker, like I said in the midseason trade video, I do see him as a very valuable target for this team. If they want to get more draft picks, if they want to get younger, if they want to get just cheaper on the team, I think Budda Baker is one of the best guys to move. You can get a solid return back, and he's a guy that just, had to ask for a trade at one point in the last year or two. Took it away, revoked the trade request. But I think there is still like, hey, you want to try and win. We want to try and get cheaper and younger. Let's move on, right? Then we have Will Hernandez. Saved $5 million cutting Will Hernandez. He played pretty good this year and not expensive. So I do see a world where Will Hernandez does stay. But $5 million is $5 million. If you cut all three of these guys, that's $15 million to go and get a better player. But I think $15 spread throughout all three of these guys is a pretty good number. So again, there's a reason it's honorable mentions. It's three guys that are playing well for the team. But if you cut them, you could save $15 million. But I don't think you can find a player that gives as much back to the team that these three players have for $5 million averaged out. Then we have free agency moves that I would make as well with the Arizona Cardinals. First up is Robert Hunt. He had a 77 PFF grade, 75 pass blocking, 76 run blocking. Had a really good year in Miami this year. He's a great scheme fit for a bruising back. The Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, running back style. James Conner is like a B- version of that running style. I think he's a great scheme fit for Robert Hunt. He would slot in at right guard, so you want to keep Will Hernandez. He can stay at left guard. Robert Hunt goes to right guard. You have Paris Johnson at right tackle. Or if you want to draft a right tackle, move Paris Johnson back. Your right side would be very secure. Help keep Kyler upright. He just came off a major knee injury, a torn ACL. Keep him healthy, keep him upright. I gave him a 3-year, $34 million deal, $21 million guaranteed. That is 61% guaranteed. I think averaged out $7 million guaranteed a year is not bad for Robert Hunt. Obviously, as you can see, the base salary is $9 million, $9.5 million, $10.5. Don't think it's too crazy for Robert Hunt. Then we have Quinton Jefferson from the New York Jets. He had 20 tackles, 8 sacks, and 22 stops last year. Really solid starting D tackle. His PFF grades weren't the best, but again, I don't rely only on PFF grades. I do a mixture of both. I rely on PFF for like run blocking, pass blocking, certain aspects like that. But then I have to go and look at like how many penalties, how many sacks did they let up, how many quarterback hurries did they let up. D tackles, exact same thing. How many run defending stops did he have? How many tackles for loss did he have? Yes, that does go into effect with PFF's calculator, but you got to use a mixture of both. Like 8 sacks from interior defensive linemen, that's really good. Yes, he's done a really good defensive line, and obviously the Cardinals don't have the best defensive line in the world, so maybe his tackles and sacks were heightened, but run stopping, that's something that you don't teach. The entire D line can go in Arizona, like I just said. There's no one good on a defensive line really. Leaky Fotu, their starting D tackle, is a free agent that I did not re-sign. So Quinton Jefferson, very veteran option, can move in and hopefully change the culture for that defensive line. Great pressure rate for expectation. They rated him very low for expected pressure rate per play, and he blew it out of the water. So gave him a 2-year, $27.5 million deal, $17 million guaranteed, 61% of that is guaranteed basically. I think it's really solid. I think you can keep him both years, and he can really be well for you. This may be one of the only cases where I might have underpaid someone. Yes, I think he's 31 years old, but he's coming off a great year. For me, I think a lot of teams would be calling Quinton Jefferson. I'd be shocked if the Jets even let him go, because I think 20 tackles and 22 run defending stops, that's good for interior defensive linemen, especially at that age. Next, we have Tyrell Dodson, linebacker from the Buffalo Bills. This past season, he had 60 tackles, a forced fumble, and 37 run defending stops. He is an amazing run stopper. This dude, especially in the playoffs, when I was really watching the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs, Tyrell Dodson was everywhere. Arizona needs a great linebacker. They have a bunch of mediocre to okay guys on rookie deals, and a couple veteran options. Like I said, I re-signed Chris Barnes. Get Tyrell Dodson. He showed his potential post Tremaine Edmonds leaving for the Chicago Bears. I think the Bills won't be able to afford him. And I think the Arizona Cardinals can be that team that, yes, you had a big boom year, let's cash in with the Arizona Cardinals. And I gave him a 4-year, $62.5 million contract, $40 million guaranteed. That is 64% of it guaranteed. I think that's really good for Terrell Dotson. It's not top of the line linebacker money. It's about 9, 10, 11 in that linebacker money contract pool. But I think, again, he played amazing. I think that he can cash in with a team that desperately needs a linebacker. And I don't see the Bills being able to afford to keep him long term. And now for the drafts. With pick number 4 overall, I think the Arizona Cardinals, the only person that I would take over Olu Fashanu is Marvin Harrison Jr. I think Olu is a better tackle than Joe Alt. I think he's a better prospect. And the only player I would take over him is Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, again, I don't think Drake May, Caleb Williams, or Marvin Harrison Jr. slip out of the top 3. So Olu Fashanu is the guaranteed 4th overall pick. I wouldn't be shocked if he's already looking at homes in Arizona. Like, him and Joe Alt should not be doing anything besides looking at homes in Arizona. Yes, Arizona Cardinals could go with a wide receiver, but I think this wide receiver class is too deep to spend a first round unless it's Marvin Harrison Jr. And that's it. Like, yes, again, you guys are going to see throughout my mock drafts, I have a lot of wide receivers in the first round. But in the top 5, yes, I love Malik Neighbors. Yes, I love Roman Dunze. But they're not better than the number 1 tackle, the number 2 tackle. Like, Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu will go before those wide receivers, Neighbors and Roman Dunze. Why am I saying his name wrong? I can't, like, now it's like a Freudian slip. I can't say his name right. I just don't see a world where they don't draft a tackle at 4. Then at number 27, grabbing Leonard Taylor III. The second best interior defensive lineman in this class after, oh my gosh, Jazon Newton. Thank you, Jazon Newton. After Jazon Newton, I think Leonard Taylor is the best interior defensive lineman in the class. He can play anywhere on the defensive line. A-gap, B-gap, nose tackle. I think he can play all of it. Whatever defensive scheme you want to run, Jonathan Gannon, he can run it. Really good out of Miami, Florida. Miami in Florida, because it's Miami of Ohio. But played really well in Miami. Miami didn't play well as a team, but I think that Leonard Taylor was one of the best players on that defense. Then out of South Carolina, Xavier Legette, I believe his name is how you pronounce it. I think he's a really solid, big body, deep threat. I actually don't have any stats off Xavier Legette. I usually write down a couple like key words for him. I did not write down anything. I don't know why. It's the one player I don't have anything written on about. But I know he's solid. I don't think he's a first round pick. A lot of people are already scheming him in the first round. I just don't see it. I really don't see him going in the first round. I think he's more of a second round guy. That we then go, wow, he could have gotten drafted by this team at the end of the first round. Yada, yada. I just don't think he's a first round pick right now. I still think he's a high second round pick. Again, this is 3 picks outside of the first round. I could see a world where he goes in the top 5, 10 picks of the second round. And I honestly am going 3 picks in the second round. Then we have Javon Bullard out of Georgia. He had 45 tackles as a safety. He's a great tackler, great coverage safety. Again, it's in the world if you trade Budda Baker, if you cut Budda Baker, he's the option to start over him. Or you bring in Javon Bullard, and he's a great third safety you have. He can play box linebacker, he can play nickel corner, or he can be that third safety for heavy passing sets. But I think in the future I could see him moving into a starting position. Then you have Peyton Wilson out of North Carolina State. Peyton Wilson had 92 tackles, 3 interceptions last season. He's an elite tackler. I think he has one of the highest tackling grades in the country. And he's a solid blitzer. Linebacker, though, there's no generational prospect at linebacker, so everyone is kind of falling down the board for me. I don't think linebacker is going to be drafted in the first round. I think there'll be a couple in the second and third rounds. I just don't see a first-round tackle this year. And that's usually pretty rare because, every draft is always linebackers taken. But I just don't see anyone making the first round right now. I'll have to wait till the Senior Bowl, have to wait till the Combine, see these guys measure in, see these guys, not only run the 40, but also watch more film of the linebacker group, because I watched no film of them at all. So maybe I will find someone that I like that could be a first-round pick. But right now, they're all second and third-round picks. Grabbing Peyton Wilson the third could be a steal in the future. Then I got Matt Goncalves. I definitely butchered that. Matt Goncalves. Whatever. Matt from Pitt. Matt from Pitt. He played significant snaps at both tackle positions. You know, it's a third-round pick. Maybe he can be a swing tackle. Maybe move him in the guard. I definitely keep him at tackle, though. Maybe he can be protection in case someone gets injured. Again, I'm a firm believer in having swing tackles. I think having that, sixth offensive lineman who's really good is really important. Kind of like what the Lions do with Dan Skipper. In those situational moments where you want to have that sixth tackle or six offensive linemen out there, I think Matt Goncalves could have that kind of role. I think he's low body, low center of frame. I don't see him as a starter. I do see him as a long-term backup. Again, I think he can be a swing tackle, kind of what Chris Hubbard made his career in Cleveland about. He just kind of became that, hey, in those downs where you need the six linemen, we call on Chris Hubbard. And in case of injury, we call on Chris Hubbard. I could see Matt becoming that for the Arizona Cardinals. Then we have Cedric Van Pran out of Georgia in the 4th round. I mean, he's been a center for multiple years for high-pressure games. He can start right away. If I can get a starter at the offensive line in the 4th round, that's why I don't think he's going to be a 4th-round pick. But PFF continues to drop him on the rankings. He's a day 2 pick. Like, Cedric Van Pran will be a day 2 pick for sure. He'll be a 3rd-round pick. Might sneak into the 2nd, but I see him more of as a 3rd-round pick. I'll probably ignore and stop drafting him from now on, just because I don't want to make it unrealistic. I don't see him being a day 3 pick. I really don't. Then we have Luke McCaffrey out of Rice, Christian McCaffrey's brother. Luke McCaffrey had 17 contested catches this past season, and I believe he's like top 15 or 20 in deep threat targets and yards. So big body, good at catching deep balls. He can develop routes a little bit more, so you have some development out of Luke McCaffrey. But again, a big body receiver who can get contested catches and is a top 15, 20 deep threat guy in this class. I mean, in college football, that's pretty good in the 4th round to help develop your wide receiver room a little bit more. Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State. He's been a great run blocker the last couple of years. Has a great frame for it. He can be a great dump off for Kyler. He had 14 yards per reception the last 2 years. And I believe he had over 30 or 40 receptions both seasons. So it's consistent that he's over 14 yards per reception. So in those red zone plays where you want to have the more big body guys, especially for a Kyler Murray type of quarterback, where you can just throw it up and the big body comes down with it. Ben Sinnott could be a really solid tight end too behind Trey McBride. Then we have Jashin Davis out of Wake Forest. Honestly, might be one of my sleepers. He might be one of my sleepers, guys. Because this dude had 8 sacks at Wake Forest. Obviously, Wake Forest was horrible this year. I definitely want to watch some of his film. Because Jashin Davis, dude, he's 6'3", 260. He can be a solid rotation pass rusher, man. He could be a solid rotation pass rusher on a championship caliber team. He's got the size, he's got the weight, he's got the frame, he has the hand size, the arm length, the low center of gravity. 8 sacks at Wake Forest as an outside pass. As an edge rusher. I could see a world where he sneaks higher in day 3 after the combine and all that. Then in the 7th round, Tim Smith out of Alabama. Played a lot of snaps at B-gap, can replace Leaky Fotu. Played a lot of snaps. That's what you're looking for in the 7th round is guys who are proven, snap guys who just maybe, they come in and they can be rotation guys for their entire career. But every team needs a rotation guy. Speaking of rotation guy, in the 7th round, grabbing Hayden Hatton out of Idaho. He had 2,400 yards and 25 touchdowns the last 2 years. The fact that you're averaging 1,200 yards and 13 touchdowns in college football, really good. Really good. A solid all-around wide receiver. Not the best route runner, not the best deep threat, not the best anything. But this kind of like what Jarvis Landry was, I guess. Kind of like what I'm trying to think of other just solid wide receivers. Trey Palmer, not Rashid Shaheed, Little Jordan Humphrey, KJ Hamler, just guys who are where they need to be and do their job. I think Hayden Hatton can be that type of receiver. Just comes in, plays his role, clocks out. Tyler Boyd could be. I think Tyler Boyd is a high upside for Hayden Hatton. Solid guy, solid rotation player. Has his years where he's like, oh, is this guy developing? And years where it's like, okay, he's a 7th round pick. But again, 2,400 yards, 25 touchdowns at a D1 school. That's not something to fret about. That is a NFL player, whether it's in the 7th round pick or whatever, he will get drafted in April. But Yeah, that is my Arizona Cardinals mock rebuild. You know, you re-sign Marquise Brown, Chris Barnes, and Greg Dortch. You cut DJ Humphries, and you sign a bunch of offensive linemen, defensive linemen, linebackers, and you inject this team with young position players, young linemen, and just young secondary. That's what you need to do is continue to draft young guys with high upside, while also injecting it with like proven commodities in the draft, right? Like Olu Fashanu, you know is gonna hit. Uh, Peyton Wilson's good is probably gonna hit. Hayden Hatt, Jasheem Davis, I think can hit for the Arizona Cardinals because they're gonna get snaps, they're gonna develop quickly. But yeah, if you guys enjoy, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit notification bell to be notified when I post next. Next up, who's number 5? Who's number 5? Because this is episode number 4. Who's number 5? Next episode is the LA Chargers. Ooh, that'll be fun. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy. I'll see you guys later. Peace and bye. Yeah.